Hey everybody, Riot Mort here, back from Vegas and getting ready for winter break with the patch 13.25 rundown, or patch 13.24b, however you want to call it. It's basically not part of the normal patch cycle, but we don't want to go to winter break, leaving the meta exactly the way it is. There's always some things we can improve, so we're making some adjustments before we head into winter break. So not a huge patch, although controversially, maybe some changes that you might consider big. But yeah, generally the idea here is that we were happy with Vegas. Vegas turned out great. The meta was really solid. There were a lot of comps that work. We saw some reroll comps, things like Annie and Yone. We saw some leveling comps do well, things like Caitlyn, Ezreal, and obviously the level 9 comps doing well, things like Jhin, Kiana, stuff like that. Lots of good stuff. But there could be more. There are a few things that aren't working. And so mostly this patch was about buffing champs and traits to get even more into the meta. So trying to get even more going, and then some item and augment adjustments. So with that, let's jump into it and get through this. The first thing, and kind of the biggest one here, is that going to 9 shouldn't be a guaranteed 5-cost headliner. That's what level 10's for. Level 9 should be mostly about 100% chance at like 4-cost headliners, with a small chance at a 5-cost headliner. So because of that, this looks like a big nerf, and it kind of is, but generally the idea here is that you're not going to be able to force a 5-cost headliner. Now notice we didn't nerf 5 costs, still be able to get lots of those, just not the headliner versions. So this is our way of nerfing level 9 a bit. We do want players to be able to hit level 9 every game. It's not like before. Level 10 is the rare thing. Level 9, every game is fine, but no headliners. All right, on the trait side, Big Shot. Big Shot's a great trait. You can play around Corki, you can play around Ezreal, you can play around Jhin, but you usually only need 2. So we're buffing 4 a little bit and 6 a little bit. So if you want to play around the vertical, you might be able to make it work. But no one's really playing the vertical right now. Bruiser, same thing. Bruiser 4 is actually pretty solid, especially in the early game. Does fall off a bit, but not a big deal. Bruiser 6, though, no one really plays Bruiser 6. This might tempt you a little bit. Again, going kind of slow on the buffs here. Who knows, maybe this needs to go even higher, but we don't want to be crazy before the winter break. So EDM, probably the biggest adjustment here as far as traits goes. No one's really playing EDM. You're going to see some adjustments to the champs, but the thing is, Zed's being played, Zac not so much, Jax not so much, and Lux, So EDM 3, 4, and 5 are going to be able to do more damage. Pretty big boosts, 10% each at 3 and 4. 5 gets a 5% boost. 5 was already kind of the one that was like okay. And then if you choose to sample Jax and Zed, those are going to cast a little more often. We're not buffing the Lux version or the Zac version. Zac's already probably one of the better ones. Same with Lux. But more damage and more sampling if you want to go those routes. Speaking of Jax, Mosher. Mosher is another trait that, for Mosher in the early to mid game with Urgot, pretty good. Other than that, not really playing it. So Mosher 4 and Mosher 6 get some more attack speed, help them out. Rapid Fire, same thing. Rapid Fire is great at 2. Everyone loves Rapid Fire 2. You get that 10% attack speed for your team, and that's it. So buffing 4 a little bit and 6 a good chunk. Honestly, it might need even more than this, but again, winter break, go slow. Spellweaver. Spellweaver 5 basically wasn't actually a thing. You would level for 15 AP. That wasn't really great. So we're making the AP per cast going from 112 to 123. This is a buff to 5 and 7, but again, those weren't really being played. And then 10 Spellweaver. It's cool that you get the 10 AP per cast, but sometimes it takes too long to ramp, and this is one of those traits that's really hard to get. So we're giving it another 80 AP up front. It's supposed to be one of those prismatic traits, so if you can hit it, cool, blow stuff up. On the champ side, Vi, pretty close to unclickable. There's a few players that make an early Vi work through stage 2, but she's weighing down Punk pretty hard. She's weighing down Mosher, and she's just not very exciting. So again, going a little slow here. Don't want to go crazy, but she'll be able to cast more often, more punches, more stuns, and she'll be a little tankier. Yasuo is another one. This one's kind of debatable because at low elo, Yasuo can do okay, but at Vegas, we basically saw no Yasuo. He was not really a real option here. We want reroll Yasuo to be an option. It's supposed to be a comp that you can play. But we're not going crazy here. 50 HP, very small here. And then buffing the spell a microscopic amount. This is so tiny. But again, just trying to give a little love to things that aren't really working. Gragas, a little bit of extra damage for Disco, Bruiser, Spellweaver. All those traits honestly could use a little bit in the early game. So just a tiny bit here. This is probably the tiniest buff that almost barely matters. But it's also nice to have him be able to use his trait Spellweaver and pump out a little more damage. Kale. Kale's another champion that we basically saw none of. So she's going to get 5 more on-hit damage at every level. And then her finale will do about 10% more damage. We'll see if this helps. If not, we'll do more. Twitch. Twitch, we want the AD side of his spell to take more advantage of Punk. Do more damage. That's great. And then, honestly, if you want to play the Guardian build, cool. Here's a little armor and MR for you to help out. So, give it a try, but small buff to Twitch. And again, we didn't want to buff Twitch and Vi a little too much and make Punk unstoppable. So, but he should be able to take advantage of his Punk trait a little bit better here. Poppy. Poppy, we're actually really happy with the tankiness. We're not planning on making him that much tankier, or her that much tankier, but she should be able to deal a little bit more damage, take advantage of her Mosher a little bit. So, spell gets buffed, small amount here, nothing crazy. Zac, this is a big buff. Champ's pretty bad. 100 more HP and a 30 mana off. So, Zac's going to be able to cast his spell more often. This was the best way, though. We can't really buff the spell directly, because if we do, then sampling Zac will always be the best EDM build. We don't really want to do that, but we do want to make sure that you can, play Zac if you want in like a Bruiser comp, hold items till that you find that Alawi, stuff like that. The attack speed Sona, we like that it's viable. It's good. A little too good. So we are nerfing the on-hit damage a good chunk here at 1 and 2 star. So honestly, it'll probably still be the best one, but just trying to, again, small nudges, nothing crazy here. We're not trying to drastically shift the meta. All right, headliners. Basically, we went through our data, went through Vegas, and it was like headliners, people aren't buying, aren't playing, aren't doing well. Nami, 5 AP buff. Cool. Olaf, extra HP. This should make Olaf headliner pretty good in the early game, hopefully comparable to things like Lilia and Kennen. Vi, a little more AD. If you want to go like Vi carry these builds with the headliner, might be a little more interesting. Gragas, a little bit more DR. Find that early Gragas, play around him. Maybe even play a 3-star Gragas headliner. Pantheon, a little more HP. We're finding generally that tanks aren't performing as well, other than like the early game. So trying to give tanks a little bit of an option here. Riven, 100 more HP as a headliner. Cool if you want to play Riven headliner. Blitzcrank, 50 more HP. Poppy, 50 more HP, 5% more AD. So Poppy headliner with that emo and Mosher should be fun. Thresh, this is a big one, but Thresh is getting 150 HP more. So again, headliner Thresh, if you're willing to play that in a Guardian comp or a country comp, should be able to take advantage of that. Kiana, the one headliner getting nerfed, 5% AD per item copy is a little nuts. If you hit that really early, it went out of control pretty quick. There were games where people were seeing 140, 160% AD by the end of the game. That's too much. So we're going to lower that down to 2% AD on item copy. So now those games should still be like, 60, 70% extra AD, which is great, but maybe not, 160. And then Ziggs, the 5 mana reduction was weird because often you want to build like Shojin or stuff like him. So we went with 15 so that Shojin fits really well with Ziggs. But, we're happy after the nerf where the bombs weren't scaling as fast, stuff like that. On the augment side, all of the training dummy augments are overperforming, so we are having to nerf training dummies again. They're getting 10 less armor and MR. On the silver side, cutting corners, way too good. Loses 1 XP. It might be bad now. If it is, we'll buff it, but wanted to get this nerf in quick to kind of make sure it wasn't just the best silver in the game. On a roll has also fallen off, so now it's going to give you 1 more gold, and you can trigger it 1 more time each turn. So should make it good for reroll comps, especially at 1 cost. Vampirism, a little too good. Didn't want to nerf the Omni Vamp yet, so we're just going to nerf the HP. It's a very small nerf here. Bigger Shot. Now that we fixed the bug, it's pretty bad. So buffing it 10%. Blinged out, little too good for true damage, and we're not nerfing true damage at all, but true damage really caps out when they get this augment, so having less health going to be good here. Inspiring Epitaph, small nerf here on the shield. It's pretty good late game. Little Buddies, another really great augment here, 10% nerf to the HP and attack speed, should still be pretty good. Low interest rates, this augment pretty bad here. Now should be pretty good because the interest cap will be 3, which means if you have 30 gold, you're basically at normal max, so should be solid. Stars Are Born, love this augment, it's pretty bad right now, 4 more gold to help it out. Three's a Crowd, really close to balanced, but just 5 HP off should help it. Too Big to Fail, this is the Bruiser Explosion one. Going to try to buff it a pretty good chunk here, actually, see if there's some cool Bruiser Explosion builds, but it's pretty bad in the data right now. And then finally, Stationary Support 2 and 3 are no longer able to roll Needlessly Big Gem. If you got this at 2-1, your win rate skyrocketed. It was definitely the best roll at 2-1 by a significant margin. Now, the obvious question here people have been asking is, what about Stationary Support 1? Stationary Support 1 doesn't happen until much later in the game, 3-2, 3-3. So, honestly, it's okay if it rolls Needlessly Big Gem. It's really about 2-1. If we had more time, maybe it's, only won't appear at 2-1 or something like that. But, yeah, it just, at 2-1, this was way too good. So, all right. This is some of the biggest stuff here. Probably the most meta shifting, if you will. Blue buff now also gives 20% AD. That means it's 20 AP, 20 AD. This means champions like Jhin, Ezreal, Kai'Sa can use this item. Not feel bad compared to Shojin. Should give it more users than just Ahri in the set. So it's now a generic mana item. We also bug fixed the bug where the damage amp wasn't refreshing properly on kill. Because of that, we did nerf it, so it goes down from 15% to 10%. And you can see the radiant value is also here. But generally, this should make blue buff a bit more of a flexible item that you can play around a variety of builds. Gargoyle Stoneplate, learning our lesson from the previous set, we don't need to buff the armor and MR per target, but 5 more base armor and MR shouldn't really be too crazy and make this a decent pick. Red buff, great item, little too great, just 5% attack speed off, nothing too big. Hurricane we like, but players aren't really enjoying it. They aren't finding a ton of success with it. So 5% more AD should help it as a flat AD item if you need more AD on your champion. And then finally, this is probably the biggest change. Spear of Shojin. Currently, it gives 25 AD and AP, combined with the fact that lots of champions like it, and it was giving a ton of stats. It was the most built item in the game by a significant margin, and too good for how much it was built. So it is going to go down to 20 AD and AP. This should make it still a good item, maybe not just the best item that you should always slam on like 80% of the champions. So, bit of a nerf there. And that's it. That's the entire patch. It's not, like I said, not a big patch. And again, part of this is that we've shipped a set that was in a pretty good state, so you're not seeing a ton of stuff. The other question, I'm sure, is people saying, like, why didn't you nerf Senna or Ahri or True Damage Emblem or True Damage Trait or Akali, etc., etc., etc.? Again, we wanted this patch to be mostly about bringing stuff up to the line, things that weren't doing well, and then we'll evaluate from there. If we have to bring stuff down after that, fine, we will, but maybe Kale can compete with Senna now with these buffs, things like that. So, taking the approach with this patch of buffs, 14.1 we'll reevaluate if there need to be nerfs. So there you go. All right, that's going to do it for me. Hope you guys have a great winter break and a holiday. I'll be streaming various things and whatnot, so yeah. All right. Until next time, take it easy.